The holding cells of Station Epsilon smelled of recycled air and desperation. Brandon Chen stood before the transparent barrier, stylus hovering over his data pad, trying to maintain the professional detachment that had kept him sane through 3 years of working intergalactic labor contracts. The Vexari girl on the other side pressed her silvery hands against the barrier. Her skin shimmered like moonlight on water, and her large eyes, 3 of them arranged in a triangle across her face, were filled with something Brandon had learned to recognize across a dozen species: fear. "Please," she said in heavily accented standard, "you buy me. You take me far from here." Brandon had heard desperate pleas before. The labor contract system wasn't pretty, even when it was legal. Beings from struggling worlds signed themselves into service, hoping for a better life on colony planets or corporate stations. Sometimes it worked out, often it didn't. But something about this one felt different. "What's your name?" he asked, pulling up her file. "Zira," she whispered. Then her eyes darted to the corridor behind him. "Please hurry. If my sister sees—" "Your sister!" Brandon frowned, scrolling through the documentation. The file showed Zira had been processed through a Vexari family broker. Her contract holder was listed as Silith, relation, sister. "She will not let me go to human," Zira said quickly, words tumbling over each other. "She thinks you are weak, soft, but that is why I beg you. Please." Brandon had learned that desperation made people, all people, regardless of species, into excellent liars. But he'd also learned to trust his instincts. "Why would your own sister put you into contract labor?" Zira's 3 eyes blinked in sequence. A Vexari gesture he'd learned indicated deep shame. She turned slightly, and Brandon saw what he'd missed before: the mottled discoloration along her back, the way she favored her left side. "Among my people," she said softly, "family hierarchy is absolute. I am youngest. I am property until I earn my standing. Silith says I brought shame to our house. She says I must work until debt is paid." "What debt?" "I refused the mate bond she arranged. It is not done. The other family demanded compensation." Zira's voice dropped to barely a whisper. "Silith has been creative in her punishment. The burns heal slowly on Vexari skin." Brandon's jaw tightened. He'd seen too much cruelty in this job. Worn too many scars on his conscience from the times he'd looked away because the paperwork was technically legal. The galaxy ran on contracts and laws, but laws weren't always just. "The Terran colonies have strict labor protections," he found himself saying, even as his training screamed at him not to promise anything. "If you're placed with a human contractor, you'd have rights, recourse." Zira's eyes brightened with something fragile and dangerous: hope. The door to the processing center hissed open. A Vexari woman strode in, taller than Zira, her skin a deeper shade of silver that spoke of age and status. Her ceremonial robes marked her as a family broker, someone who dealt in the contracts of her own kin. "Human," Silith said, her standard perfect and cold. "You are evaluating merchandise that has already been spoken for. The Krillian Mining Consortium has expressed interest." Brandon knew about the Krillian operations. 6-year contracts on asteroid mining platforms, minimal oversight, species rights violations that somehow always fell through legal cracks because the stations operated in disputed space. "The girl requested human placement," Brandon said evenly. "That's her right under station charter." Silith's laugh was like breaking glass. "The child has no rights I do not grant her. She is family property transferred to labor contract. Her preferences are irrelevant." "Actually," a new voice cut in, "they're not." Brandon turned to see Deborah Morrison striding into the room, her Terran Colonial Authority badge gleaming on her jacket. His heart lifted. Deborah worked enforcement for the TCA, specifically handling trafficking cases. They'd collaborated before. "Agent Morrison," Syleth said, her tone suddenly wary. "This is a family matter." "It was," Deborah agreed, pulling up her own datapad, "until someone flagged Zira's case for review. Funny thing about Vexari family law, it doesn't supersede Galactic Convention statutes on sentient rights. And according to these medical scans," she turned her pad towards Syleth, "someone's been using disciplinary measures that cross the line from legal punishment into systematic abuse." Syleth's skin rippled with color, a Vexari threat display. "You have no jurisdiction over—" "Station Epsilon operates under GC authority," Deborah interrupted smoothly. "Which means I have jurisdiction over any case involving potential trafficking or abuse. So here's what's going to happen. Zira's contract is voided pending investigation. She'll be placed in protective custody." "With whom?" Syleth demanded. Deborah smiled. "Pending review, she'll be assigned to temporary custody of a Terran sponsor. Brandon here is qualified." She glanced at him. "If you're willing—" Brandon didn't hesitate. "Absolutely." Syleth's three eyes blazed with fury, but she was trapped by the very legal system she'd tried to manipulate. "This is not over, human. The family will deal with GC investigators," Deborah said firmly. "And if they're smart, they'll cooperate fully, because systematic abuse of contract labor carries serious penalties, station-wide penalties." The barrier around Zira's cell disengaged. The girl stumbled forward, and Brandon caught her arm gently, feeling how thin she was beneath the fabric of her simple tunic. "Thank you," Zira breathed, tears streaming from all three eyes. "Thank you." Brandon helped her toward the processing exit, Deborah running interference with the furious Syleth behind them. As they reached the corridor, Zira looked up at him. "Is it true," she asked, "what they say about humans? That you are soft?" Brandon thought about Earth's history, the wars, the struggles, the long climb toward recognizing the rights of all sentient beings. Thought about why humanity had insisted on strict labor protections when they joined the galactic community, even when it made them seem naive. "Yeah," he said quietly. "We're soft. We think beings shouldn't be property. We think family shouldn't mean ownership. We think mercy is strength, not weakness." Zira's three eyes blinked in sequence again, but this time Brandon recognized it for what it was: relief. "Then I'm glad," she said, "to belong to humans now." "You don't belong to anyone," Deborah said, joining them. "That's the whole point." And as they walked toward the TCA offices, toward paperwork and processing and the beginning of Zira's actual freedom, Brandon felt something he hadn't felt in a long time working this job. Hope that maybe, just maybe, they were getting it right.